There we go. Thanks everybody for being here. What up, Lara? I am just trying to make sure that I have, there we go. So welcome to day 2. I'm so glad you could make it. Carolina, I had a total brain fart yesterday and I want to apologize for that. I realized after I got off our day 1 session that you're in the Get It Done Club with me, which I'm like, of course, that's where I know her from best. Anyways, my brain was farting all over the place yesterday. I also had plans to meet with some friends in the evening, and I got a text from one of them at like 6:30. We were meeting at 6. She's like, "Are you coming?" I was like, "Oh my God." So I think I was in a bit of the creativity vortex. And yeah. Anyways, I'm super happy to be here with all of you and to dive into today's content. I wanted to remind you that I invite you to take whatever sparks joy in you from these sessions and leave anything else that doesn't. So just trust that you're getting exactly what you need. Also, we're planting seeds here over these 5 days. So it's normal for questions to come up after the fact as that seed germinates. And so please do know that I'm always happy to nerd out about creativity outside of these calls. I'm going to put my email address into the chat. Most of you have it, but just in case, it's just a friendly reminder. I'm here to nurture your creativity alongside you. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you want to. Today, I wanted to allow it to be a little bit more interactive, just a little bit, and collaborative. So there's a couple of times throughout the presentation that I'm going to be asking you for your own thoughts and opinions. And so just take a minute and orient yourself around where the chat box is, so that you know where to go when those moments come. And last but not least, I'd love to hear how you're all doing. And emojis are one of my favorite forms of communication. So if you go along the bottom, you'll find the reactions button. And if you click on that, there's the 3 dots. And I'd love for you to pick an emoji that describes how you're feeling today. Oh, that's a good one. That's one of my favorite go-tos, Laura. The love emoji, the little hearts. So cute. I feel you on that. Inspector, yes. I love it. I also really love, is it here? I hate it when some apps don't have all the emojis. You know the disguised guy with the glasses? I love that one. I don't know if I use it accurately, but I love it anyways. Okay, let me start my presentation. Emma, did you post a emoji? If you did, I didn't see it, but I would love to. So at any point in time, feel free to share your emoji. Oh, there it is. Happy face. Love it. Okay. Thank you for playing that with me. All right, let me share my screen. We'll get back into our presentation deck. All right, can everybody see Connect to Your Creativity? Yes, awesome. All right, so today, you'll notice I fixed this slide, so the typos are gone, yay. Today we're into day 2. We're talking about creative trust. We're also going to circle back a little bit on what is creativity. And I wanted to share a little bit about my intention behind these 5 days, because I didn't do that yesterday. So one of my intentions is I love encouraging people in entrepreneurship because I think it is such an incredible way to spark change in the world and to create personal and professional freedom. That being said, I know how easy it can be for us to put pressure on ourselves in the entrepreneurial space. And, we start out our businesses because usually there's something that we really love. There's something that's ignited in our spirit and we want to take it out into the world. And through the process and through the pressure that we can put on ourselves, we end up doing something we love, but not really loving what we're doing. And I want to make sure that we can come back to the love of it and enjoy the process of what it is that we're creating. I also work with purpose-driven people and people who are really heart-centered. And again, I want to encourage more of those people to step into that ownership and to create amazingness out in the world so that other people can benefit from it. So that's sort of the intention behind what I do and why I've put this course together, because for me, creativity is one of the ways we tap into that magic and that spark inside of us. And it's a really helpful strategy that I think can bring us back to the joy and the magic of what it is that we're here to do. So that's me and why we're here today. And I wanted to ask you, this is to kind of circle back to how we started yesterday around what is creativity. And I'd love to ask you, this is the interaction point. What's the difference between what we would typically deem creative and non-creative acts or services? So feel free to share in the chat what you see and how you see them as different. You might even share something like what you love about creativity. Laura says non-creative, no problem to solve, steps laid out. Yeah, it's very formulaic. I think too, there's like real structure. When I think of non-creative spheres or acts or services, they feel very structured, predictable. Good one. Anybody else? Creativity requires thinking outside of the box, while non-creative does not. Yeah, I love that. So I would agree about all of those. We've sort of been conditioned to think about things either as very linear and structured and predictable, or creative, which is out of the box and wild and free. And I like to think about how we can start to marry these things together. When we think of the structured, the predictable, when it comes to the idea of creative efficiency, which we talked about yesterday, that's really like those two that I said we tend to overemphasize, right? So when we get into the planning and the strategy and we start to create these rules for ourselves to follow, and then we get into action mode and we want those rules, those points of focus or those strategies to happen perfectly in the formula that we've derived in our brains. And I think sometimes that's where we lose that creative magic and where we lose that creative spark. So today we're going to be diving into creative trust, which is another concept that I've come up with. And this is where I hope we can start to dismantle some of the regimented structure and the expectation around predictability and allow those two spheres. So the idea of planning and strategy coming together with creativity, because of course it's important. It's important that we put steps together. It's important that we implement our actions, right? But we want to make sure that we're bringing that creative magic into it as well and not abandoning it altogether. So what we are doing is learning how to embrace the unknown. And an example that I love to use is that of a GPS. If you think about a GPS, what we do is we put in these coordinates, right? So we put in the starting point and we put in the end destination. And then we have these wonderful pieces of technology that then create a formula for us to follow. And wouldn't it be awesome if we could do that in life? Maybe. But what's interesting is that we follow the actions that the GPS gives us as if it's written in stone. And what we know is we never actually know the direction that we take or the course that we follow until we get to the end point, even with a GPS, because of course accidents can happen, right? Where the route gets obstructed and we have to take a different route. Sometimes if you're like me and you like to go rogue, sometimes we'll like take a turn on purpose that's not part of the route that we were given. So we never actually know the course or the direction that we're taking until we get to the end destination. Another example of this in action would be something like a tomato plant, right? There's no tomato plant that grows in exactly the same formula. Some will grow more leaves than others. Some will kind of follow a diagonal path, whereas others will follow more of a straight up and down path. So we are not meant to know the exact route of the how. We're just meant to use these things as a guide. And that's the way I like to think about strategy and the implementation of the strategy. So allow some freedom in it. Now let's dive into this idea of creative trust. So to help talk about this idea, I wanted to share a personal experience that came out of my work as a graphic designer in advertising. I had one year in particular in which we had multiple pitches that we worked on. So a pitch is where you're essentially pitching for the work. So we'd get briefed on it, and it's very similar to getting a project brief. And in 2 weeks, we would have to come up with a finished design and campaign. They were really high intense projects and under tight timelines. And so we had probably about 7 of these in a row through the course of a year, back to back. And what that did was it allowed me to really develop a very intimate relationship with my creative process. And this graph exemplifies what that process looked like. So at the beginning of the graph, right here, we would get briefed on the project. And I would immediately go into like excitement and passion and joy. I'd be like, this is so fun. We're going to create such an awesome thing. And then the project would start. So I would go into research mode. I love research mode because I love to learn. So this was always a very comfortable place for me to hang out in. I'd get to research all sorts of things. I worked in pharmaceutical advertising, so I got to research about different disease states or different experiences that people went through. Also something I was very interested in. So this was like my happy place, the briefing and the research phase of everything. And then it would come time to start taking action on the research and to start coming up with ideas. I was pretty comfortable in the ideation phase, brainstorming and all of that kind of stuff. Then it would come time to implement the brainstorms and start creating tangible pieces of design. This is where I would drop quite suddenly into frustration, which would quickly be followed by anger, then fear that I would lose my job because I'd tell myself that my work was shit and nobody was going to like it. Then we'd move back to anger again. I'd be angry at myself. I'd be angry at my boss. I'd be angry at a lot of people. Then I go to frustration. All this time, I'm trying to create something and come up with ideas, and I am doing that. I'd land on something that worked, and then I'd go into fine tuning. I'd realize everything was going to be okay. Maybe I would survive this process, and then we would complete the project. This was the process I went through every single time. And so by the time we were hitting the fifth, sixth, or seventh pitch, I started to see it differently. In coaching, we call this phase the river of misery. So that phase where we are going into frustration, anger, fear. And we call it the river of misery because it's like you're in a river, splashing around in all of these emotions. As I started to relate differently to this emotional process and this journey, it was like I was able to take myself out of the river and see it for what it was. So I didn't identify so much with the emotions. They became part of the process, which took their potency away a little bit. Like I'd tell myself, oh, this is the part of the process where I experience self-doubt. That's normal. Cool. And I'd just work alongside the self-doubt. So yesterday I introduced this idea to you around how can we become more secure around the insecure emotions? And this helps display that a little bit. Does that hit home with anybody? Can anybody else relate to that experience in the creative process? Anything cool I've ever created had a river of misery along the way. I love that, Laura. It's so true. I've really become curious about this. I do think that it's important that we build our comfort levels with this whole river of misery idea. I also am starting to play with the idea of, does this have to be a part of our process? So I think a level of acceptance is important. And then also, like, what would it look like if we didn't have to experience that, and what would change? Laura says she notices this in surf as well. Yeah, Laura's a badass surfer, and that's cool. Yeah, I'm sure like you're literally in the water with the waves. It's like such a great analogy for it. So, oh no. Okay, well, there's a picture here. It's a beautiful picture of two hands holding one another. But you're going to have to imagine the picture, actually. Is there some way I can fix this? Oh, there it is. Okay, maybe I just did it. No, okay, whatever. So in what I just described around the creative process, what I was really doing in building security around the river of misery was I was starting to create trust in the process. So trust is, just so that we all come together on a definition, the ability to rely upon or place confidence in someone or something. And I believe that trust is one of the most loving energies that we can offer, both to ourselves and to others. Yesterday, I mentioned how creativity is always a collaboration. And we all know the value, I think, of being in collaboration with someone or something that we trust, right? For me, what creativity really is it's a collaboration with spirit. It's a collaboration with our intuition. And so that makes creativity kind of a spiritual process. And there's value in starting to learn how to trust in spirit, trust in our creative spirit that lives within us. I love this I love this insight that you brought, Laura, around seeing the river of misery happening and getting excited that a breakthrough is coming. I think that really speaks to this, right? When we're able to trust the process and when we're able to trust ourselves within the process, all of a sudden some other emotions become available, like delight and excitement and anticipation. I started playing with that around the emotion of anxiety. That anxiety might just be my creative spirit, like bubbling up to the surface, which makes that relationship with those emotions so different. And here's where, when I was kind of advertising this particular day, I talked about what do nature and creativity have in common? And this is a quote that comes from Marianne Williamson. I remember coming across this quote years ago, and it really opened my eyes and opened my mind to look at creativity in a different way and to look at human existence in a different way, because I think creativity really is such a vital part of being human. There's a reason why we have this skill inside of us and this drive inside of us. And I think this quote really speaks to it. So the quote is, embryos turn into babies, buds turn into blossoms, acorns turn into oak trees, and the same programming that exists in them exists in all of us. So when it comes to creativity and the creative process, how can we start to surrender to that process and understand that there's a natural process to it? Embryos aren't deciding the twists and turns that are going to help them turn into babies. They just become babies. Same's true with buds and with these acorns. And what if the same is true for us? So these creative inclinations that we have inside of us, whether it's to create a really kick-ass, awesome, hang loose kind of day out on the waves, or whether it's to create a book, a cookbook, or whether it's to create a business, all of these things may be whispers from spirit that are using us as a tool to bring those things into creation. As creators, it's a very creative way to spell creators. As creators, there's a lot that's not in our control. And what if that is actually a good thing? And what if we can surrender some of that control and be in collaboration with the creative spirit that lives inside of us? So that completes today's teachings and today's seeds that we're planting. I would love to hear from all of you what hit home for you, and if it's allowing you to see anything different or new, what it's opening up for you. So if you don't mind sharing, I'd love to hear it. And while you're kind of pulling your thoughts together, tomorrow we're going to be looking more at what I call the creativity mechanics. So going back again to what we kind of started looking at yesterday around our being, who we are being, and the value of that in our creative efficiency, we're going to be looking at what that really means. What does it mean, our being and our identity? And what are some of the ways that works together, right? The mechanics of our creativity. So that's what we have to look forward to tomorrow. And Emma says, I've always thought of collaboration as external, collaborating with others, but I like the idea of collaborating with ourselves. Yeah, it's kind of it's just way more exciting, I think, to think of it that way. And it means that the pressure isn't all on us. In yoga, we talk a lot about connecting to your observer, right? And yoga, of course, was a system that was designed to help calm the mind. And really, I think a lot of that comes from being able to connect with this observer inside of us, the unchanging force inside of us. And when we look at it that way, we're able to now use our body, our brain, as tools that we use and come into collaboration with. And we can even start to think about spirit, the creative spirit that moves us. So I'm glad that hit home. Carolina says, a new way of seeing the river of misery and accepting it as a phase of the process. Yeah, for me, it seems so much less scary when I look at it that way. And Lara says, yes, I love the idea of connecting, collaborating with spirit. There's a cool quote by Vivian Westwood using the oak and the acorn metaphor. I'd love to see that quote. Laura, if you ever come across it, send it my way. I'll maybe do some digging as well. All right, everyone, thank you again for coming. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. We'll play a little bit more with this idea of creativity. If you have any questions or if you have any further insights that you want to share with me, I'd love to hear them. And also, if you have any friends that you think would benefit from some of the stuff we're playing with this week, then feel free to send out those replays. I'm happy for other people to see them. And yeah, other than that, I will let you all get on with your day. And I really look forward to sharing more tomorrow. So thanks again. I'm here if you have any questions as well. I'll stay on for a bit. Thanks, Carolina. Thanks, Emma. Bye, Laura. See you tomorrow.